What was the most memorable thing your class clown ever did? Our class clown had the two wonderful abilities of being able to play the baritone sax and circular breathe. School talent show. He enters. What does he do? Blows a super long low A note for 10 minutes straight without stopping. Like one long low note. Like a foghorn. And he made everyone sit there while he blew this long, loud shaking note. That was a fun talent show. A kid in our music day talent show did something like that. He walked up the grand piano in the spotlight, sat down, and waited for like 4 or 5 minutes. Then he got up and left. Our class clown wasn't a student, rather the teacher. Our teacher for units 3 and 4 physics, say in Victoria, Australia, was a well-known larrikin. Found every excuse he could to teach us with experiments involving liquid nitrogen, sodium, and other such dangerous things. The school had actually banned him from using potassium in this experiments because he had set a room on fire by accident. All the danger aside, he was the most engaging teacher I have ever had, and I learned so much from him. Towards the end of my graduating year, my whole class, about 10 people, were all 18 years old, and so we would go to the local pub for lunch every Friday for a counter meal and a drink. We happened to have a double period of physics after lunch and accidentally stayed past the start of class. 15 minutes into the period, and the most responsible girl in our class gets a call from our teacher. "Where are you guys? Class started 15 minutes ago." "Sorry, teacher's name. We went to the pub for lunch and lost track of time." "Are you all there? Do any of you have a textbook?" Yeah, give me 5 minutes." Sure enough, 5 minutes later, he turns up and proceeds to run us through our lesson in the pub, with the caveat that it was not to happen again. As far as I know, he somehow retroactively passed it off as some sort of last-minute excursion, and because we were all legally adults, we didn't need to get our parents' permission. Truly a madman. This is the most Australian school story I've ever read. The only way it could be more Australian is if he rode his crocodile to the pub to teach you guys. A dude in my math class brought in a garbage bag full of donuts once. Like 20 minutes after the class started, he just breezes in with this magical bag of pastries. Not in my time, but legends in my school. We had a weird old building that was added to a half dozen times. Outside of the 3rd floor windows there's a narrow ledge of the 2nd floor roof a couple of feet down, but you can't really see it unless you stick your head out and look straight down. One day the class had a sub. Since it was May, the school windows were wide open. No screens either, since these were ancient windows and school isn't in session during summer bug season. In the middle of class, a student gets up, yells that he's sick of life, and jumps out of the window. The student then walked over to a window in the adjoining hall and climbed back inside. Another time during typing, the students knew the typewriters were getting replaced at the end of the year. So when they had a sub with a couple of days left in the semester, a student just randomly stood up and says he's sick of typing and throws the typewriter out the window. And finally there was a teacher that without exception would come in 5 minutes late, then would stomp on the papers in the wastebasket. One day the students quickly emptied it, ran down to the restroom and filled it with water, and then floated some crumpled papers on top. During my time, 4 of my classmates including the class clown borrow a car from a friend of one of their mothers, then head to Reno over me weekend. A 4-day weekend for a teachers convention in my state. They get as far as western Wyoming before being pulled over for speeding. The friend didn't press charges, but they spent the weekend in jail until the parent of one of them could fly out there and get them. If this sounds mild, consider this was a private, conservative school. The school suspends them for a day and then they're back in class on Tuesday. I can't stop giggling at the wastebasket one. Jumped out of a 3rd floor window to go get a better view of a fight happening in the parking lot. This was the end of June, so everyone was getting a little insane by that point. He was always nuts though. Now he's a father with like 3 or 4 children. Unreal. What were his injuries? Pretty sure it's not the wildest thing he did, but the best thing he did was ask to be dismissed in the middle of class, then came back 10 minutes later with a full pizza meal combo, including an order of garlic bread bites for me. He then proceeded to turn to the unbemused teacher and stated, "I found this in the bathroom. I want to use that bathroom." He duct taped a condom over the assistant commandant's exhaust pipe. He started driving away. It inflated to the size of a beach ball and sounded like a shotgun when it finally popped. I'll have to try that one. A kid was bragging to the teacher that he had a girlfriend. This conversation was in front of a class of 30. He was talking tough like he was the greatest player in the world, calling himself a true master of the ladies. The teacher asked him, "Where did you guys meet?" Then out of nowhere, the class clown shouts, "Page 4 of male escorts on Craigslist." Still the most savage remark I've ever heard. Kids were falling out of their chairs from laughter. The kid looked like his soul was ripped out. Freaking genius. So this was in English class. I'm Danish, and we all had to do a presentation about a famous scientist. This guy starts his presentation, and it's immediately obvious that he's just reading off Einstein's Wikipedia page. That, combined with the fact that his grasp on the English language was pretty loose at the time, turned into him telling the entire class that Einstein became an American Satan in '97, was a psychic and a spy and died of an erotic aneurysm. Dang. I hope I die of an erotic aneurysm. He got expelled for holding a public hanging of a teddy bear in the first grade classroom. He even brought rope for the noose. The first grade was not amused. He recited the Friends, Romans, Countrymen monologue for class but dressed up in a suit and delivered it like a Southern Baptist preacher. The funniest part was that he was Jewish. That sounds beautiful. Came to school during School Spirit Week, a week where we had a more relaxed dress code if it had to do with school spirit, wearing nothing but boxers and duct tape in the school's colors. I could see some jerk coming up and ripping it all off. After class, he went to the bathroom and took a huge dump into his beanie. Afterwards, he hung up the beanie in the wardrobe in front of the classroom, so the turd could hang there all night. The next day, nobody wasn't allowed to enter the building due to an unexplainable smell. The principal walked around the building to find the source of the smell. He came closer to the beanie, smelled on it, took it off and looked inside of it. He went home for the rest of the day afterwards. I think this is the second most bizarre story in this entire thread. Hid under the table during Catholic class. He was a Protestant and teacher was sick, and barked every time the teacher turned around to the board. It was a good bark. After 10th time he noticed that barking came from within the classroom. He walked around to find him under the table, looked at him, he kneed there, barked and run to the door on his hands and legs, opened the door and was gone. We all had a good laugh including the teacher. A girl in one of the choir classes made kitten noises and had everyone searching under the seats and in the cupboards and whatnot for a litter of squeaky newborn kittens. I wasn't there, but apparently she fessed up about the time somebody was going to take the back panel off the upright piano in case they were trapped inside. He brought an inflatable clown costume into school. Halfway through the lesson he went into the cupboard to put it on, then continued as if nothing had happened while slowly being inflated. Dude went streaking from the far east side of the school, past the office, through the cafeteria, out the west doors. He had a toque over his junk at first, but that fell off at some point. He came out the west doors with his junk in his hand screaming, "I can't believe I made it this far," jumped into his friend's getaway jeep and rode off. Freaking beautiful. What a legend, man. Teachers used to just walk away when he started acting up. I can vividly recall each teacher's "I am not dealing with this crap today" expression every time they interacted with him. I miss him. Some guys in my class tried streaking through the mall. When they got to their ride, the guys inside kept the doors locked as a joke a bit too long. They all got snagged by mall security. I knew a guy who brought a prostitute to prom. It was pretty dang funny when I heard about it, but he was a couple years older. Every year, the principal would pick a couple of seniors to read the morning announcements over the PA system. Our senior year he picked the two class clowns. I don't know what he was thinking, but the announcements were really entertaining that year. Finish his actual announcements and now, some random Yeti noises, Rorg. Another time, they got the history teacher to do his Nixon impression after the announcements. Stuff like that, every morning. At least people actually listened to the announcements that year. One time we had a sub in math in 11th grade and the kid spent a solid 20 minuets trying to swallow a whole spoon. He got it down, but then about 20 seconds later started throwing up the spoon. and a bunch of applesauce, then just went back to work. Talk about deep throating. We had a national testing initiative where every student in every school completed it every year between 7th and 10th grade. He colored in the bubbles so that his name read McLovin 69er. They gave out certificates for each student with their mark a few months later, and the teacher went bright red reading that one out. It was bring your own cup day at 7-Eleven, so the kid came in with a fish bowl full of Slurpee, and we had an exam that day and he fell and sprayed half the class with Slurpee, ruining their exams and scantrons. It was a hard test, so we all greatly appreciated it, but our teacher was pissed. This kid is going places with the fish bowl of Slurpee idea. In my sophomore year of high school English class, we did a presentation where we had to read an autobiography memoir book. The class clown, who wasn't the brightest student, gave his speech on the story of children that were fleeing from the African army. It was obvious that he did not read it, or partially read it at best. He described the book as intense and emotional. He said there were multiple times I thought that the kids were going to die, but I remembered that they wrote this book. The entire class bursted into laughter. Ran for class president. During his speech, he got one of his friends to jump up and pretend to be an assassin trying to take him out, and 3 or 4 more friends, dressed in black suits like Secret Service members, to tackle the assassin. He won, but of course the administration found some way to disqualify him. Oh god, this is amazing. Drank some milk, turned his eyelids inside out, squirted milk out of his tear ducts. Still to this day the most disturbing thing I have ever seen in person. It's not what he did, but what was done to him. He was a smart guy but easily distracted. One day in math class the teacher is doing a problem on the board. She calls on him to walk her through it. It was some pre-algebra type of thing. Kid behind him, Todd, is feeding the answers to each step. It finally gets down to something like 2x equals 10. Todd says divide both sides by 2, so Ben says that. Teacher says what's the answer? Todd whispers -13. Ben proudly states -13, with so excited relief that he fooled the teacher. Only then does he realize it's not even close. This was in 7th grade, and as kids are known to do, -13 was an inside joke until we graduated. I did something similar to a friend in Spanish class. I was feeding him the answers and then I decided to have some fun and tell him that the word for 50 was quinceanera. Our class was on the ground floor and the window faced our soccer field, and on that rainy day we saw a huge flock of seagulls just hanging out on the grass. My friend raises her hand and asks to go to the washroom. About a minute later, she's outside running through the flock of seagulls waving her hands and yelling. She came back inside a little winded and damp from the rain. We had a hard time not falling on the floor laughing. At our school's music competition, he enters the singing category, then he proceeds to sing the ISIS theme song. To clarify, we are in Britain and so by law the school had to call counter-terrorism officers in. That was an awkward afternoon. There was fight in 8th grade between 2 black girls, and there was a lot of hair pulling going on which caused pieces of weave to fall onto the floor. Well, our class clown picked it up and tried to sell it for $20, jokingly. He then proceeded to put it in his pocket and take it to his next class and continue to mess with it. I'm still puzzled by why the teacher didn't take it away. He doesn't get paid enough to confiscate black market weaves. Hid inside a cabinet and made random noises when the teacher was teaching, and the teacher was getting mad thinking it was this other kid and was about to write him a referral and wouldn't believe him when he said it wasn't him and it's some kid in the cabinet. Now that's clever there, purely innocent, and I'm sure the class laughed. This was in a 4th grade class. A girl brought in cupcakes for her birthday, and they all had this bright green frosting on them. When it comes time to pass out the cupcakes, the class clown takes his and smears the frosting all over his face. I tell him to go wash it off, and he does, but the green frosting stained his face. He had a green face for the rest of the day, and he spent the entire time making crappy puns related to the color green. Sounds like your average Redditor TBH. As a senior prank, he left a morning class to use the bathroom. Instead, he went out to the parking lot where his older brother, who had already graduated, was parked with a moving van. They re-entered, bringing with them several cages containing at least 30 live squirrels, which they proceeded to set loose all over inside the school, as well as hundreds of golf balls. When the bell rang and that period ended, it was freaking chaos in the hallways. What happened to them? One kid I know stood up, threw a piece of ham from his sandwich on the whiteboard and sat back down. He was quickly sent to the office. I can't stop laughing at this for some reason. In psychology class we had this kid from Zanzibar. One day, he decided it'd be a good idea to light matches, drop his pants, and burn his balls. I have so many questions. Organized a cafeteria-wide paper ninja star throw. At exactly the same second, the whole cafeteria all threw a paper ninja star. There was a lot of cuts and poke ties actually. Really freaking stupid. Mostly just the boys did it and knew about it, so a lot of girls didn't have time to cover their eyes. I was a student teacher in a middle school and had to monitor a study hall during the last period of the day. The kids sat at tables in the lunchroom, so the place was pretty disgusting and most of the students were antsy because they just wanted to go home. One day a group of 6 guys all had their hands up, so I went over to see what they wanted. They told me there was something wrong with Brian, the class clown. I asked him if he was alright, but he just sat staring into space. I asked him again, and he opened his mouth, but instead of answering, 10 flies came out and wandered all over his face. He had pulled their wings off and then put them in his mouth. That is not a class clown. That is the prologue to a horror movie. There was a guy I went to HS with and he had just bought this alarm system for his car that had a keychain that would alert him when it was going off. He was so proud of this alarm system and would always brag about it. So, my friends and I would leave campus for lunch, or for the rest of the day, and kick his tires to set his alarm off. We would take off running to our cars and watch him bust out the school doors freaking out. We did this for an entire year. It was hilarious. Y'all's some bags. We had this one guy in my class with pretty severe ADHD. He was always pulling some hilarious crap. We also had a phone in each room that could dial other rooms. This was reserved for staff, but Buddy didn't care. He once dialed a teacher and said, in a death metal growl, "Hello, this is Satan. I'm going to eat your soul." Teacher got freaked out and called a prayer meeting. This was a conservative Christian school. He called another teacher, who was probably old enough to have watched dinosaurs eat her parents, and said, "Hey, this is Andy from Wigs R Us. Just calling to let you know last month's payment is overdue." At the class Christmas party in 7th grade, he spent probably 10 minutes shaking an unopened 2L bottle of Coke. When he cracked the lid, it blew off and sprayed all over the ceiling. One teacher had a stash of Reader's Digest magazines. He spent a good 15 minutes at lunch throwing them out the second floor window at kids below heading out for recess. Got probably 3/4 through the box before a teacher stopped him. He used to get kicked out of class for being disruptive. Would crawl back in when the teacher wasn't looking and hide under one of his friend's desks. Anyway, guy went to a different school starting in grade 9 or so. Think he got much better care there. Last I heard he was in the army and doing great there. Teacher got freaked out and called a prayer meeting. LOL. Did bet me if he could drink 4 liters of cocoa milk within 30 minutes. He was only missing like 70 centiliters when he ran out of the classroom to the WCs, which were all taken. Ran down the stairs to the floor below. Well, tried. Puked midway down. All over the white walls. Streams and streams of cocoa milk. It was glorious to witness. Also I won. One time, this kid bought a box of strawberry condoms, blew one up, and licked it in front of the class. Teacher was gone, so we were just dicking around for an hour. He claimed that it tasted good. Well, if you're going to dong around, might as well have condoms. He kept getting busted in our science lab for looking at his phone, so eventually our teacher, who was this younger guy with the worst temper, made him move from the lab tables to the front of the room, into a tiny desk with a little compartment in the middle. He tried hiding his phone in it until the teacher busted him. Then he got busted with an iPod inside of it, and then a Game Boy, etc. He had already racked up like a month's worth of detention, and the teacher was so pissed off about it. Naturally, we convinced him to set up an entire board game inside the desk before the next class. I have never seen a teacher lose their crap like that before. It was great. Freshman year, my friends and I had a lot of fun in our chemistry class. One day the teacher had left the room, which left us with the ample opportunity to have one of us climb onto the counter behind his desk and take a nap. Then we happened upon the tests from our class and proceeded to make a blanket for my friend. The best part about the whole situation was the teacher not noticing my friend was on the desk until he started snoring. My friends and I found it hilarious while the teacher was not amused. It wasn't a single person. It was two twins. At one point, they were playing some form of catch in the class during a break. One of them left the classroom. The other hid behind the door. The guy hiding behind the door then heard someone, presumably his brother, enter the classroom again, so he jumped out from behind the door, his right hand formed like a gun, shouting, "I'm gonna shoot you," except it wasn't his brother. It was a teacher supervising the halls during the break. Hilarity ensued. This was in Austria, in the latter half of the 1990s. There were no consequences for anybody, just a lot of shame. Teacher asked, "Does anyone know how your body makes a hormone?" Reply was, "Don't pay her." 9th grade. Thought Mrs. Fox was going to pass out from laughing so hard. Threw a Bible out of the class window on the 2nd floor. It crashed down right beside the school principal, who was just leaving for lunch. Dove and slid across the teacher's desk like a slip and slide, knocking off every single thing on it. The teacher was not cool with it at all. She had a freaking nervous breakdown. One biology teacher of ours who beat cancer was bragging about her new car at the start of a class. A Civic, but she was pronouncing Civic instead of Civic. So, one guy tell her, "Teacher, it's Civic." "Yes, I owe one, and you don't." Everybody just went silent for a while. When she started the class about reptiles, the guy asked, "Reptiles can get cancer? It's cancer." "Yes, you owe one, and I don't." He got kicked out. I don't get it. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.